Remember I talked about water, not good to have too much, but you need a little water because when it rains, it's distilled water with lots of bacteria, goes into the ground, it dissolves earth so the plants can eat. Water is a solvent. It leaches, it tears apart things so that things can live off of rock and soil, hard substances to dissolve them. It causes fungus. Rust is a fungus. Many metals rust. That's a fungus that allows rock to break down so that plants can eat. Animals can eat the plants, we can eat the animals. Very simple. If we take in water, it starts dissolving and diluting our system. It starts dissolving our systems. It'll start thinning out the mucus. It'll start disassembling good nutrient structures. Let's say every time a cell eats, there's a combination of a variety, a smorgasbord of nutrients that are all bound together. Yeah, I mean, it's so microscopic. And when a cell goes to eat, it has 1 to 2 ions inside of it. And when it goes to eat, it opens up, and with these ions, it tracks the ions that are passing. Let's say it's a couple of potassium and maybe 5 calcium ions linked together with vitamin A, protein, fat, some carbohydrate, all linked there together. A good smorgasbord. Draws it in and eats.
Now, water very often fractionates those smorgasbords. Therefore, cells get much less than a full balanced diet. They become nutrient deficient. Salt does the same. Salt and water causes cellular malnutrition. Salt is more destructive.
When you eat salt, for each little bitty grain of salt, it causes clumpings, 4 to 5 at a time.
When salt clusters attach to the cellular smorgasbords, they will either fractionate it, as I stated earlier, or it will create very large clusters, clumps that cannot be absorbed into the cell.
So what happens, 4 or 5 of them clump, cell goes to eat, this magnetism is so much greater, it pounds the cell, rips the ions right out of the cell will never ever eat again. It will shrivel up like a grape to a raisin and die. Every little bitty grain of salt will destroy 1 million red blood cells. You can fit about probably 10 million red blood cells on a pinhead, but still you're destroying a lot of cells every time you eat salt. So, not a good idea to eat salt, unless, like I say in the book under remedies, if you have adrenal fatigue, you have a problem with sodium utilization. And then it's only like maybe 4 grains a week is all. Maybe 1 grain a day every other day. Very little amounts medicinally. And that's just until you get over the adrenal fatigue. That can usually be resolved in about 9 months if you're eating a good diet, like I suggest in the book. And the We Want to Live, it has all of those remedies. It has thousands of remedies for over several hundred diseases. You go through that book and you highlight every symptom you have ever had. That's what you want to have when you go through that symptom again, because if you've gone through it in the past and you weren't on raw foods, chances are 90 to 1 that you will have that symptom again in your lifetime because you did not clean properly and you did not rebuild properly. So whatever symptom you had in the past is going to revisit you. And ask any elderly person. They know it. So the next time you go through it, make sure that you cleanse properly and heal properly. And that'll happen if you eat properly. If you don't eat properly, you keep eating toxins, and then you poison your system. Your body uses the nutrients it has available to deal with that toxicity, and then your problem is not resolved. Your toxins are not removed. That part of your body remains weak and toxic, and to surface with a problem again in the future. And if you have an area that you continually stop from detoxing by taking medication, you've added to that toxicity, and you will probably have a disease in that area. So why take that chance? Take care of yourself. When you're going through a detoxification, realize that it's detoxification. You've had how many years of poisons every day? You are full of toxins. Expect 2 or 3 colds a year and praise them, desire them, because you will get healthier every time. I had an AIDS patient come to me about 2 years ago. She had pneumonia 3 times before she came to me, and 6 weeks before she came to me. And I told her if she doesn't get through pneumonia the next time without stopping it with antibiotics, she was likely not going to make it. She says, but I can't breathe. And I said, the only reason you can't breathe is because you're working against gravity. If you're lying down and your lungs aren't functioning fully, what is gravity going to do? It's going to push your lungs flat. You want to work with gravity? You sleep sitting up. You sleep at a slight angle, and then the gravity keeps the lungs pushed open. She got pneumonia 10 days later. She got through it in 3 days, and she never panicked but near once, one night. And she was able to get through all the night. She got through the pneumonia. She was out of bed and back to her normal life, just from going through that one terrific pneumonia. And she just had to get through it once. Different life now. She's almost normal, even though she has AIDS. So get through your detoxifications, and there are tricks in the book. You take the pain formula, in both books. There's a pain formula in the recipe book that's probably the best and a little bit more advanced because it's the latter. And it's basically the lubrication moisturizing formula or moisturizing lubrication formula with some bee pollen put in it. You're eating cheese with it. Now, I call it the moisturizing lubrication formula because it's one of the most important formulas that I have. It will allow the body, it has, let me tell you what it has in it. It has egg, it has butter or some other fat, but preferably butter, a little bit of honey, and lemon juice, so it tastes like a lemon meringue drink. You can put a slight bit of coconut in it, coconut cream in it, and it even gives it a slight different flavor. Now, the reason that formula is so important, because your body's starved for fats everywhere. Whenever you eat butter in any other form, or cream, or cheese, any of those, the organs and glands take all the fat. Very little is left for the bones, the connective tissue, and the skin. It's like being in an orphanage, all the big kids and the closest kids to the food get most of it, and all the little weak kids in the back don't get much. So the lubrication, the moisturizing lubrication formula, because the lemon's in it, helps it digest so fast and get the fats and the different cholesterols, because there are 60 varieties of cholesterols that are formed. A third of them lubricate and protect. A third of them help give you strength and energy. And a third of them clean your system. So you have 60 varieties that are made almost within an hour, hour and a half. That goes through the system quickly. So quickly, all of the glands and organs can't take it all. So you get some out to the outer parts of the body. Now, I call it the moisturizing formula to appeal to women, because I don't know a woman that doesn't like moisturization. And for men, it's lubrication. And that's it. So that's why I call it that. And it is it's probably the most important formula that there is for our systems in this toxic world. And if you have that with a meat meal, it's much more effective, or right after the meat meal. If you have problems digesting your meat when you eat it with the meat meal, then have it 10, 15, 20 minutes at the most after you finish your meat meal. If you're bodybuilding and you want to put on weight fast, have a large amount of meat and one whole moisturizing lubrication formula with that meat meal, and you put on weight fast. Had a 57-year-old man, on the diet 2 years, real skinny, really skinny guy. Here he was, filling out and feeling pretty good, and he always wanted to be, heavier his whole life. So here he was, 57, 58 years old, on the diet 2 years, and said, "Can I bodybuild on this diet?" And I said, "Sure, just eat a pound of meat twice a day with a whole lubrication formula. And just, suck your eggs and drink a lot of milk and, and eat more meat if you want. It's a minimum of a pound at a time." He's about 6'1". So in 2.5 months, he put 4 inches on his arms and 6 inches on his chest. So Gold's Gym, they told him he was taking hormones, steroids. He says, no, I'm just eating raw eggs and raw meat and raw butter. And they didn't believe him. It's that easy. It'll work. Well, you heard Jeff Slay's story. He put it on quick because that's the kind of diet I put him on, because that man came out of Auschwitz. I mean, that was skinny, frighteningly skinny. And you can see the way he is now, happy and great. So if you're having a bone loss, any kind of a pain problem, tooth problem, anything like that, you need extra minerals. The only place you're going to get an intense amount of minerals quickly is from eating cheese. Now, cheese is indigestible in the human digestive tract when it's raw. The body has no enzymes to utilize it properly, and for some reason the pancreas leaves it alone. And that reason is because the body uses cheese as a sponge. It draws, the magnetism of it is so great that it draws the poisons as the blood, the neurological system, and the lymph make their way through all of the digestive system. The cheese draws those poisons out and locks onto it like a sponge. Passes it through without digestion. So it removes a lot of those toxins. Every time you get nauseous, you take a little sugar cube amount of cheese, sugar cube sized amount of cheese. Take it every 10 to 20 minutes until the nausea stops. If you have nausea, poisons are dumping into the stomach. Indians, everybody knew this, that if you got bit by a snake or any other creature, the poisons went right to the stomach. Because what does the stomach do? The stomach neutralizes with hydrochloric acid any poison. Can neutralize snake poison, any kind of poison very rapidly. Sometimes they would use milk to draw it to the stomach quicker if it wasn't moving as quickly as they wanted it to. But the whole point was to draw it into the stomach to neutralize the poison with the hydrochloric acid. So whenever you get nauseous, that's a sign that the poisons are dumping there. The hydrochloric acid is mixing with it, but your body does not want to pass it through the digestive tract. It wants to vomit it, bring it right back up. But if you eat the cheese, you don't have to throw up so much. In fact, you'll reduce vomiting by probably 70%, 75% by eating the cheese, because it can just pass through you. Now, if you need a mineral supplement, the only way you can get a concentrated amount of minerals without drinking tons of milk is to eat cheese and honey together in the mouth together. They have to be together in the mouth. Only way I found that we could digest them and get enough minerals to repair the bones and teeth and everything else rapidly. If you're in pain, you get the honey, butter, and cheese, or just honey and cheese. Nausea, cheese. Milk is one of the most valuable substances in the world, because in whatever form it is, it does something entirely different, beneficial. no matter how you separate it, unless you cook it. When milk is in its fresh form, it is less digestible, so it's always better to let it ferment. Now, the Hunzes and a lot of those people make kefir and yogurt, but when they used to make it, their grain was grains of honey. It wasn't these grains that they're producing from the rennet of a stomach or anything else. These are washed bacteria, and they are not natural once they're washed and conditioned. They don't encourage your own bacterial growth. They allow you to digest a lot more of the milk product, but they do not encourage your own own increased digestive ability. So it's better to put a little bit of honey in that if you don't like the Caucasus and Bulgarius bacteria working faster and you don't like the bitterness too much and too sour. People usually don't mind the souring, but they don't like the bitterness. That's the Caucasus. The Bulgarius digesting the fats too quickly, faster than the Caucasus and the acidophilus. So you just put a little honey in there, and that retards the digestion of the Bulgarius bacteria a little bit. So you can get it a little sweeter. And that, if you put it in a bowl of warm water, a sink with warm water for 6 to 8 hours, usually in 24 hours you have kefir, unless your house is cold like mine and it takes longer. Then I'll put it in my hot tub, where it's 101 degrees at a cow's body temperature, 102 degrees. And then, I'll have nice kefir in, 24 hours. And that's the way you can do it. But it's always good to have pre-digested anything, meat, dairy, anything, because your systems are not that healthy. You don't have rich bacteria. We're too toxic. We've been eating all this pollution. So you don't have the proper colonies, the large colonies. So we can use all the help we can get. So if you want to get well faster, you want to get on the express lane, then ferment your food. Make it into kefir, naturally. It tells you how to do that in the recipe book. Just add 1 or 2 tablespoons of honey per quart. What I do is take the milk out of the refrigerator first, or if I get it unrefrigerated, it never goes in the refrigerator. And it goes into kefir and lasts. And then I can refrigerate it after it becomes kefir, because it's already pre-digested. If you drink cold milk, the stomach shrinks, contracts. Hydrochloric acid does not secrete. Milk moves into the duodenum undigested. Casein and lactase, milk sugar, gets into the blood undigested. Allergies, problems. You're going to be using a lot of your calcium just binding with the sharp milk sugars that aren't digested properly and the casein. So don't drink cold milk unless it's 2 ounces on a hot day. That's not going to pass out of the stomach. It's going to have that warmed. But if you eat, half a cup to, a cup, some of that's going to move into the duodenum undigested, probably half of it. So be careful if you're going to drink cold milk. Be very careful and sip it. You can just keep it in your mouth until it warms if you want, but don't let it get into your stomach cold. And it will cool your mouth if you just keep it in your mouth. It will help cool your system if you're too hot. Because I'd much rather you drink milk than eat water. Water is not a good thing to eat too often. You haven't seen me eat any water. I don't eat water unless I'm in Asia and can't get any milk. And I can't get vegetable juice. But I take a juicer with me. Now the juicer that I take and travel with, it's a centrifugal because it's very lightweight. But you have to remember, when you juice with a centrifugal juicer, you're getting all that air into it, so you're oxidizing a lot of your nutrients. That's not a good thing. You want to oxidize your nutrients. You want to keep them as valuable as possible. And I'll show you in a few minutes with this juicer what we're going to do. So it's always better to have juice from a juicer where it's got a contained environment in it. Now let's go over an eating schedule. Now, the body functions in a particular way. and studying it for 32 years and observing it, feeding different animals different ways than humans and different systems. And I found out that this works for everybody. The different types just have to eat different types of red or white meat, different combinations. That you have to experiment with and explore. Now, I've given you some hints in We Want to Live. You know, if you keep color a long time and you get it easily, you're more of an acidic bloodstream person. So you should eat less red meat and more of the poultry or fish. Now, in the book, I call it white meat. Misnomer, because you can eat poultry, which would be in the white meat category, like ostrich. Ostrich is as red as liver. So it's not really red meat, but it's any poultry, fish, or seafood. Falls into the other category. Red meat is goat, beef, venison, bison, anything like that. Sheep. Pig is both. It's on both sides. Pork. If you eat pork. I do. I like it. But I only have it about every 4 to 6 months. I get a craving for it, and I'll eat it. Makes my grandmother turn over in her grave, but that's the way it goes. But I'm mainly a half and half. I'm not a high activity person, but because of the vagotomy that I had, where they severed the vagus nerve, I have to act like an athlete that eats half red and half fish and poultry. Doesn't give me quite as much energy. I mean, I could be flying off the walls if I were able to eat my, proper way. But I'm one of those low activity persons anyway. In my irises, I have no activity rings. Athletes have 7 to 11. So they have to exercise 8 to 10 hours a day. And if you have any activity lines in your rings in your eyes, that means you produce hormones for activity. And if you don't burn up those hormones every day, you will burn them in anxiety. So every day you wake up, you got 2 doors to choose from. Anxiety, activity. Which do you want to go through today? How do you want to spend your day? Anxiety or activity? It's that easy. Some people have to spend a lot of, burn a lot of hormones. People like me, this is mine. All day long on my computer. 20 hours sometimes. Talking on the phone, that's my energy. And once, every couple of weeks I'll be up doing this for about, 6 hours, 7 hours, on a Saturday. And, I don't do anything. I carry my groceries once a week. And I've got all this muscle and it's solid everywhere. And I'm 26% body fat. Pretty good. So when you start in the morning, most people, not everybody, but most people need alkalinizing minerals. They've gone through a night of nervous system detoxification, and there's a lot of acidity in the bloodstream, over-acidity in the bloodstream. So a vegetable juice is the ideal thing to eat. Celery is very good because it's the lowest in carbohydrate. There's not enough carbohydrate in celery juice to digest celery, so it's a negative. You add a little carrot and parsley to it, which are high in some carbs, brings it right to a good balance. So you make your major proportion celery and go from there. Parsley is very important because of vitamin D, vitamin E, chlorophyll, all of that to keep the lungs functioning and the nervous system functioning rather cleanly. It also gives your body a tremendous amount of enzymes and vitamins, as well as the minerals, to help your appetite increase, to get ready for digestion. So you have a vegetable juice, depending upon your size, and if you look in the recipe book, it'll tell you about the quantities for your size. Then wait about an hour and have a meat meal. Now this is a very important meal. If you have a high carbohydrate meal, you're going to create a lot of advanced glycation end products. Also, the body for the first 6 hours, 7 hours that it's awake, decides how it's going to make glycogen for the day. Glycogen runs the nervous system. It's the blood sugar that runs the nervous system. If you eat high carbohydrate food, glycogen will be made from the carbohydrate. If you don't, if you eat protein, the body will make that glycogen with pyruvate. Very clean. And in the human system, if we use pyruvate as the sugar to make glycogen, along with glucagon, we only have 7 to 8% byproduct, 12 at the most in some people. And we handle 12 to 15% easily. So there's no advanced glycation end product stored at all. So that first meat meal is very important to keep. If you have advanced glycation end products, it's very sticky. So it makes the neurological system very sticky. It makes the blood system sticky. So what happens, the cells stick together, the synapses try to fire, and they'll misfire, go all kinds of ways. So you want to be clear, you want to be focused, you want to be alert, eat that meat meal. Don't eat high carbohydrates. Then the next meal, 2-3 hours later, you need to calm the nervous system. You've got the body generated with the protein, got the nervous system, everything going. Now you just need to make sure that all the byproducts of all of that are neutralized to keep you balanced. So a milkshake is very helpful. Eggs, milk, cream, and honey. And in the book, it gives you reference to your size and the quantities in the recipe book. Then the next should be a vegetable juice again. Now, if you experience lethargy and extreme tiredness after vegetable juice, you have a system that doesn't do well with advanced glycation end products at all. So you should only have 1 to 2 ounces of juice at a time. You can try 4 ounces of juice. If you're having 8 to 16, and that's too much, then you cut it in half. If that works, that's fine. If it doesn't work, then you cut that in half. Don't go under 2 ounces. But that should stop right there. That should be your problem. That should take care of your problem. Now, a lot of people will say, what about this, eat right for your type diet and a system of, eating the right foods. There are carbohydrate burners, there are protein burners, and there are both burners. There's no such thing as a carbohydrate burner in a human being. There isn't, because of the advanced glycation end products that build up. Just because somebody utilizes carbohydrates quickly does not mean it's healthy. And if they have trouble digesting protein, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't eat protein. They need to eat protein in a way that they will digest it, not take from it or stay away from it. Paul Cohen, he's been on a diet almost 12 years now. Paul Cohen was an Olympic tennis player who was McEnroe's coach for 10 years. This guy has been strictly on the diet for 12 years. He gets younger every year, and he's like 68, 69, something like that. And he said if he only knew this diet when he was a player and a coach, McEnroe would have been a nice guy as well as, a champion. And he could have gone on and on. And, these people could play until their 50s probably with no problem. But they're just not on a diet to foster that kind of longevity and body agility and strength. So don't look at those diets as you should have this and you shouldn't have that. They're animals that eat the same things every day. We need to eat the same things every day. And anybody tells you that we shouldn't have the same diet, they're right to an extent. Everybody is a little different. But the basic foods and the basic principles are all the same for everybody. Maybe you need a specific type of fruit, you need a specific type of amount of honey, a specific amount of butter and cream and eggs and milk in meat, in different kinds of meat. Those things you get to experiment with and find your center. And they will change too. They will change. As your body changes, it will change. Its needs will change. And you just stay in focus about what those changes are. And I've given a lot of symptoms of what to do in certain circumstances. So that's what I'm saying. You go through my books and you outline everything that you're familiar with, because those are the things that are going to revisit you in your time. And you just adjust your meats, you adjust whatever to make it work for you. So this is about noon here. If you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you have your second juice about noon. Now you can start eating your carbohydrates after that. Here you're 6-7 hours over your day. Your body's already made the glycogen for the day. It will be made from pyruvate, mainly from the meat in the morning and the milkshake. So, after that juice, if you're diabetic or have hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, you want to break your meat meals up into 3 meat meals a day instead of 2. Most people should have 2. But if you have hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, or diabetes, you need 3 meat meals a day. So let's say the average person should have, let's say that's from 5 foot to 5'8", a pound a day. It goes up as you get taller, and I explain that in the book, the quantities. And you can have up to 3, sometimes I eat 3 pounds a day. If I know I'm going through a healing crisis, that means I feel sleepy a lot. That means my body, 90% of the healing, cellular division, happens in the sleep state. You know, that's how cells reproduce. They just divide and become clones of each other, twins, and they just keep reproducing that way. So most of it happens in the sleep state, 90%. So when I feel sleepy, I will chow down the meat. I'm an opportunist. I'm going to take advantage. When I'm sleeping, I'm going to produce as many cells as I can. And you see here I am 60 years old and still ready to go. And I haven't slept since 10 o'clock last night. Not even tired a bit. So you'll have another meat meal if you have one of those problems. If you're not diabetic or hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic, you'll go on to your fruit meal. And after the people who are in those conditions, they go from their meat meal to their fruit meal. Now, a fruit meal is cleansing. Remember I said, if your body uses carbohydrate in the system in high amounts, it will make alcohols. Alcohols are cleansers, as well as being able to utilize fat properly in the body as energy. It will also make solvents to dissolve toxicity, to eliminate toxicity. It uses the alcohols to transform some fats into solvents. Most soaps were made from petroleum. 50 years ago, 90% of all the soaps contained coconut cream. Too expensive to have the land to grow it, to wait for them to grow, to harvest them, to open them, all this stuff to process and doing that. So now they just make chemical garbage soaps, poison all of you every time. Best thing to do is make your coconut cream, some that you don't eat and starts fermenting. That's what you use for your bath. Best thing to do. Then, after you eat, now a fruit meal should always have fat with it. And if you have some dental problems, you have some bone problems, always have cheese with it too. Because anytime you have a high carbohydrate, your body's going to use lots of calcium and other minerals to control those sugars, those alcohols. It's going to help neutralize a little bit because it gets over acidic. So it uses the calcium and the phosphorus that's added with, and potassium causes like a foaming soap, and that helps cleanse the body. So it all works well, but it can cause a deficiency because we're so deficient already. So you might have to eat cheese with that meal as well, but always eat a fat. Now, the most important fat for cleansing is coconut cream. Now, I can take coconut cream and put it on a metal lid, a metal canning lid, and in an hour it can turn gray. pulls the metals up that quickly. I can use butter, I can use coconut cream, I can use olive oil, flax oil on that metal. Could take a day, 24 hours, a week before it starts pulling up the metals, dissolving the metals. But that coconut cream is rather instant. It's amazing stuff. So, coconut cream, eat that with some fruit, but always eat some animal fat with it, butter or cream. Because when you start moving a lot of toxicity like that, you need the animal fats to protect your system. I've had people who've said, oh man, this is so good, I'm cleaning out all over, it's great. And then they do it for 6 months. You know, I mean, I had one guy that was eating, 5 ounces a day because he wanted to just clean out so much so quickly. It sure helped, but boy, at the end of that 6 months, he was crazy. I mean, he was just off the wall. He was like he got too thin, and all the fats in his body were torn up and utilized because he couldn't keep up with his need for animal fats because of all the coconut cream he was consuming. So you need to be wise about what your body can handle. I usually recommend 2 to 3 ounces maximum with that fruit meal, and at least a half a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of dairy cream. Now, the dairy cream protects the nervous system. Very important, protects the nervous system. No other fat can protect the nervous system like raw cream. Not butter, not any other fat. So when people are craving ice cream, they got some brain problems. And that's good. They should eat a lot of cream. Suck it. Definitely. Drink that cream. The nervous system is probably a little awry too. So they do it. So after you have your fruit meal, then the next is another vegetable juice. If you're very thirsty, go ahead and have it. If you find, though, that after this vegetable juice, you go a long time without hunger and feeling like nothing's moving, that is vegetable juice you should cut out or cut way down. Then after that is your second or third meat meal. If you're a diabetic, hypoglycemic, or hyperglycemic, it's your third meat meal. If you're not, it's your second meat meal. So if you're one of those three, you'll have half of a pound and a half of a pound. If you're diabetic, or one of the other two, you have a third of a pound, a third of a pound, and a third of a pound. Always have butter with your meat meals. The lubrication moisturizing formula is always the best, but at least have butter with your meat meal. Cream is very difficult to digest, so be careful eating that unless you're having it with onion or something else to make it more digestible. The liver has to produce a lot of enzymes and, along with the bile, to transform cream. And it will make 2/3 of it into butter and 1/3 of it into nutrients for the nervous system. So the cream is important. But it's very difficult when you eat a lot of cream with your meat meal to digest the meat because it will coat the meat. And then you may see some nice glistening, like pearlized meat particles, come out in your feces that you haven't digested because the cream has coated it and prevented the hydrochloric acid from penetrating the meat. So be careful with the cream when you're eating a meat meal, if it affects you that way. If your liver's good and produces all the enzymes and everything comes out brown and good in your feces, then you don't have to worry about it. You can eat cream with your meat. Then after that, have another milkshake before you go to bed, or, a glass of milk or kefir yogurt. And then sometime during the night, if you don't normally get up to urinate or do something, wake yourself. Because if you go 5 hours without eating, the red blood cells become completely the blood serum becomes completely protein deficient. The red blood cells become cannibalistic and eat each other. Causes a very toxic condition. I mean, I've never met a human that was healthy enough for me to eat. So your cells having to eat themselves is not a very good appetite. It's not very good food. and it causes a lot of toxicity. People can sleep 8 to 10 hours. The red blood cells are eating themselves after 5 hours. They wake up and they have to go for caffeine, a soda pop or coffee or something to jack them up because they're too toxic. So you set your alarm. Say you want to get up 5 hours, drink, half a cup of milk, suck an egg, a raw egg, or, half a cup of meat, and go back to sleep for another 3 hours. Some people wake up 5 hours and eat, can't go back to sleep. So set their alarm for 3 hours, and then they can sleep 5 hours. Works like that very easily. Okay, now I'm going to go over here and bring this over. So, the juicer. This is a good juicer. It's got 2 magnetic stainless steel presses in here, juicing machines. I don't like the plastic ones that are all plastic in here, because when you have plastic pushing on plastic, it outgasses dioxins. And you don't need dioxins, plastic dioxins in your juice. So these are magnetic metal, and all the pressing happens, all the crushing happens in the blades, and or the gears. And they're aligned very well, and the pulp comes out the end, so you need a bowl out here for that. And then this catches the juice as it comes out here, and just put it in there. Now when you're putting parsley in, don't put the leaves in first. Put the stalk in first, and they'll just disappear on you very easily. People stuff that down there, jamming and jamming and jamming, and get stuck. Just put the stalks in. 2 or 3 of them at a time, they'll just disappear on you, because it'll just pull it down in. Put the leaves in there, the curly leaves, and it'll just stop up. Okay? And you notice that the blades on one side are down deeper. So when I put celery in, I just go push it. I push it down this angle right here, so it just pushes down in there easily. Zucchini, cucumber, it's very mushy. So I'll only put like a quarter of one. I'll cut it into quarters. I'll put only one of those through at a time. And then I'll put celery, and then I'll put parsley. Parsley dries it up. So I'll put a celery, then I'll put some cucumber or zucchini in there, and then, because then it gets all mushy, and then I'll put the parsley in there, stalk in, and then it just pulls it through. And it helps get the juice out of the cucumber or zucchini, and moves out drier. And you can always take the pulp and put it through a couple of times. It doesn't come out dry. Now this is the Green Power, this is the Green Star 1000. And I don't use this unless I'm putting coconut cream, unless I'm making coconut cream with it. I use the wooden one. You see how somebody's eaten a lot of plastic here, because this is usually, grooved here. So you're eating a lot of plastic, I see. So I use a wooden one. Then I like to use the right jars for the right purpose. Now, these are wide mouth jars. I like to cut my meat up. And when I bring it home, it's always in plastic or something, plastic bags. If I'm going to a regular supermarket, I don't let them put it in the paper. Paper is one of the most toxic substances created. I lived on Jekyll Island, Georgia for a year and a half, and Brunswick, Georgia was a paper plant. When the wind would shift and go over, the odor was so horrific, I would get headaches and be sick for weeks. It was terrible. The rate of brain cancer in Brunswick, Georgia from that paper factory is 38%. The deformities is 64% children with deformities in Brunswick, Georgia. So paper I stay away from, except to wipe my butt. And then I use cotton, because it's woven a different way and you don't have all those chemical binders in it. So when I get my meat home, I haven't put it in a plastic bag, and then they wrap paper in that. And then when I get home, I remove it from the plastic, I'll cut it up and put it in here. put it in wide-mouth jars like this. And that's, this is 2 cups right here. 2 cups is 2/3 of a pound. It usually takes 2.5 cups to 3 cups to make a pound. So you've got nearly, a pound in here if you've got 2 cups. And then you might want another one, or, different sizes. You could have the 12-ounce jelly jars and make 2 of them. There's your 2 meat meals. Because then you've got, 3 cups here. And not quite full will definitely be a pound if it's about 2.5 cups. Now, this is my vegetable juice. When I'm making vegetable juice, I put it in an empty honey gallon jar. And as I make it, let's say I'm drinking a quart a day. That's what I used to drink. Now I'm not as unhealthy, so I drink about 1 to 2 cups a day now. But when I was drinking 4 cups a day, that was 96 ounces, quart a day. So I would make 92 ounces of juice, cut the foam off the top of that. I poured into the gallon jar as I juiced it, because you can see this doesn't hold 92 ounces. So I put it in the jar that I kept in the sink, cut the foam off the top, put it in a jar like this. So I had a measure of foam about like this. I put 2 tablespoons of honey per quart. So that was 6 tablespoons of honey I would put in here with the foam. Then you have an osterizer blender. It has a black base that screws onto the big bowl, and it has a blade with a base on it, and then a washer. Now, if you blend in a blender bowl, you're sucking oxygen, air down into your whatever you're juicing, whatever you're blending. Oxidize 1/3 of your nutrients in about 1 minute, 30 seconds. Destroy about 20%. So what you want to do is get an osterizer blender. You get rid of the bowl, and then you take these like this. Here's an 8 ounce. You can get to 4 ounce, 8 ounce, 12 ounce, 16 ounce, and quart jars that have the regular mouth jar that fits on and screws on to the osterizer blender. And the washer that comes with that blender is too little. It's very thin, and it's just the size of this glass. Falls down easily, gets caught in your blades. So you go to a hardware store or a small appliance store, and you say, I need a washer for a Cuisinart. A washer for a Cuisinart. You say, oh, what kind of model of Cuisinart you have? Oh, I don't remember. You don't tell him you have an osterizer, because it's illegal for him to sell a part for a different machine. So the Cuisinart washer is much larger. You can see it expand over even when you put the blades and the base inside and on top. You can see the rubber washer outside of the metal ring, so you know it hasn't dropped down inside. So you can always watch it. Then you take the black plastic base and you screw it on there, turn it upside down on the juicer and turn it on. Very little air space in there. You choose the right size of jar for the quantity of food that you're blending. So there's very little oxygen in it. Then you can drink right from these. Very easy. So what I do is, like I said, when I put the foam in here, put the honey in here, put the blender blades on, screw it, turn it upside down, and the blending turns the foam back into a liquid. Thins the honey so that I pour it into the rest of the vegetable juice and stir it, my 96 ounces. Take all my jars. Let's say I have this one the first thing in the morning and this one in the afternoon, somewhere in the evening maybe, about 5 o'clock, this one first thing in the morning. So I drink this one and this one. So I make, I have 3 of these and 3 of these. That takes care of my 3 days. They're in the refrigerator ready for me to take with me. Now these are the only things you have to keep refrigerated in your day because they spoil fast. Doesn't mean they're bad, but when they're fermented, they will cause massive detoxification of all the cooked vegetables that you've had. So you can have it, but in small amounts if it's fermented and old. But just remember, it's like, the old wheatgrass juice stuff, about fermenting your grains and stuff like that. Sure, it helps clean your system out of old toxic stuff because it introduces the bacteria and all this fermentation that normally comes with degenerating to ecologically transform to keep things ecologically moving around. So when a food has been used in the body, it has the natural bacteria. We have the parasites that are natural in the intestines. I didn't get that tapeworm from anywhere but my own tissue. All animal tissue has parasite memory and eggs in it. I did a test once. I paid $60,000 to do this experiment. Took a room that was about 10 by 6, split it in half. We used a wall that was sterile. Both rooms were sterile. Slaughtered a sheep. Sterilized. Everything was very clean, very sterile. We sterilized it with vinegar. So everything was, even a distilled vinegar that I don't normally use. But just for the tests, we did this. Slaughtered the animal in that room in a sterile environment. Took it into the other side where we had it in a glass pedestal. Went all the way up. It got its oxygen through another trap that went into the other side where there was a corn dracaena that plant produces a lot of oxygen. 3 HEPA filters. The oxygen had to come through, so there are no parasites that could get through 3 HEPA filters. So that's the way the oxygen went to this piece of meat. Kept the meat at the sheep's body temperature, which was about 101.6. 2 days, little things started moving. 3 days, we had parasites. Nothing was exposed. No parasites were ever exposed to that animal flesh. All parasites are a natural part, and all bacteria is a natural part of animal tissue. So when they tell you you get tapeworms through your feet, hello? What are these people thinking? They're not. They're not doing any experiments. They're hypothesizing. And they have no tests to prove any of it. Just like the raw meat theory of getting parasites from meat. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. So that's how you do. You can make things and take them with you, put lids on them, and enjoy them.
Right up to the top with no air in it?
Yeah, as far up to the top as you can. You can probably have still about a teaspoon and a half of air space in there. That causes very little deterioration. It will last for 3 to 4 days. So you only have to juice every 3 to 4 days. Isn't that terrific? Now your coconut cream, that's a job. It takes hours and hours and hours to do that. So it tells you how to do it in both of my books. One step I left out was you have to warm the meat. In Thailand and the places where they make it every day, it's at least 80 degrees. So the fat, the cream separates from the pulp easily, but in a cold house, it will not. So you have to get the house up to at least 70 some degrees, put the coconut pieces, in jars, immerse them in a hot bowl in the, a hot sink of water, not hot enough to burn your hand, but hot enough to heat it. So it takes about 10, 15 minutes to heat. Then you start juicing it, and then you'll get lots of juice. You can get about 8 to 10 ounces of juice per coconut. If you don't, you can get only an ounce if you don't heat it. So it's a very important step. Now, I don't have the time to be doing that. So I bought a bunch of equipment in Thailand and had it shipped over here. And at Rawsome Club in Venice, they juice it now. They'll heat up one of the trucks there, and it's heated up to like 85 degrees, and they juice it all day long. But I got the machines, also to, you can take the hull off, take the shell off of a coconut in 15 seconds. Over there, they can do it in 5 to 10 seconds easily. And, then it grates the coconut meat, and then you put it through the big juicer. And the juicer is like that, only this big and stainless steel. So it's huge. So you can make like 5 gallons an hour. But if you don't want to go there and get their coconut cream every week, because they do juice it every week, and it will last a week easily. If it's fermented, it's still even better for you. Be more of a cleanser. Just make sure you're not eating too much if you do that. But when I didn't have these juicers and I had to juice it myself, I don't like doing it. So I got a 3x5 card, went to a high school gymnasium and put up there, I need somebody who likes to break things, $8 an hour. I got about 50 calls. And I picked an African-American skinny end, very hyperactive that wouldn't mind doing that all day long. So I had him juice about 10 to 15 coconuts for me once every 5 to 6 weeks. And he would juice it, he would put it in the little 8-ounce jelly jars, put about a quarter to a half a teaspoon of lime juice in it and blend it, and it would last 5 to 6 weeks easily. Now in the book I tell you to put more lime juice in it, but that was a typo. It should only be 1/4 to 1/3 of a teaspoon of lime juice. So I don't know how that got through me, but let me tell you, when you're doing recipes, you're looking at all those all the time. Wait, is that the proper amount? And all this stuff is 1/3 to 1/4 to 1/3 of a teaspoon only of lime juice per 7 ounces of coconut cream. Very little is needed and is necessary. Lose too much lime juice. Lime juice is an antibiotic. It's an antiseptic. Lemon juice is a fermenter. It will help you break things down. That's why they use it, to marinate fish and chicken or any kind of poultry. It helps break it down. Lime juice is just the opposite. I learned that. I did a commercial on Tahiti, and I didn't like Tahiti, so I went to Moorea, which is the island between Bora Bora and Tahiti. And, this was 1996, and I was feeling like Superman, so I'd been on the diet a long time. And I was out there snorkeling by myself, and, it was a gorgeous place to snorkel. And they always tell you to watch the tide. Well, I had no idea 6 hours had gone by, and I thought I'd been out there 3. And I look up, here's the tides coming over the coral. And I thought, oh, shit. I had 20 feet of coral to get through before the next wave crashed down. So I'm watching and timing it, and each time the time's going by, getting lower. So I made my dash through, the area where they had the grooviest area for me to get through. But that came right down at the end when I was almost out of it and ripped my thigh all the way up from here to here. So I thought, oh, I'm Superman, it's okay. You hear all the stories about, what coral will do to you, So I went to a restaurant, and on Moorea, a restaurant there, it wasn't at a hotel. It's at a picnic table in some native's yard in a shack, and that's a restaurant. And they'll just serve you, whatever they're cooking for themselves or preparing. They're the ones that taught me to eat raw poultry. They marinate in lemon or lime juice with tomato and some onion. And so that's the first time I ate a dish of raw chicken from anybody. First time I ate raw chicken was 1978, but this was actually served to me. So I was amazed, that it was served like that. I didn't know anybody ate poultry raw, but they did. Anyway, the little 16-year-old native girl comes out, looks at my thigh, I had shorts on, and she said, "Did you get that in a coral?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "You ate right there." And I said, "It sounded like my mother." So I waited there. She came out with a lime, half of a lime. She said, "Now you squeeze that on and you rub that in." I said, "It'll burn like hell, but I'll do it." So I did it. 20 minutes later, all the pus was gone. Pus was just gone like that. All of it stopped. So lime juice is an antiseptic and an antibiotic. You have a cut, you clean it with lime juice, not lemon juice. You clean it with lime juice, put some honey on it, and meat over that. And nobody needs any kind of grafting as you get a terrible burn. Just put honey on, you clean it with lime juice first, put honey over that and meat over that. James Stewart out here had a wreck in his truck on the 405, on the 10 freeway, flipped over because somebody cut in front of him, flipped his truck over, skidded for a quarter of a mile. He flew out of the driver's seat, out the passenger's window, took all of the skin on his arm from here down to here, took it off. Highway Patrol, the fire department, the police department were trying to get him to go to the hospital. He refused to go. So he went home, cleaned it with the lime juice, put the honey on it, the meat on it. I saw him 14 days later, skin was completely healed and regrew over. Just a little bit of pinkness. We're talking about from here to here, down to the bone in spots. Muscle gone too. All healed in about 14 days. So, nobody needs grafting. You see those people go around grafting all over, and that turns into scar tissue, and they're in pain all the time because it all stretches. It's hideous what the medical profession will do. It's hideous. It's hideous. I remember I was doing a workshop in Georgia in 1981, and I was talking about urine therapy, how it's good as an antiseptic, and how you can use it for different things. And a retired policeman from Miami Police Department stood up and he said, "Can I say something about that?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "When we ever found somebody who was shot or in an accident and bleeding, we were told to pee in a cup and pour it on there, and it would stop the bleeding in a minute or two." Wow. 1928, they stopped them. And they said they watched hundreds of people bleed to death because they couldn't pour the urine on them anymore. Because the medical profession said it was uncleanly. Hundreds of people, we said, we watched die just from that. So don't be afraid of the body. Don't think those things about you are dirty. The only thing that's dirty is medicines that are going into you and all the other pollution from contamination of food and the air and everything else. So don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of your body and your secretions, unless you're drinking poison. Then be careful.